Good evening. My name is Chastity Bolden, and today I'm going to attempt to defend a dissertation or describe the results of a dissertation titled Texas Educators' Perspectives on Implementing the IDEA Child Find Component Using Response to Intervention by Helen Wiegand. This study was actually published this year in 2024, and it basically explores the challenges and the perspectives of Texas educators regarding the implementation of the Child Find Component of IDEA using response to intervention methods, basically what the title said. And when I came across this particular dissertation, I asked myself, I was like, what is the child find component? I was like, I'm sure I know what it is, but maybe, I just know about another name. And what I liked about Wiegand is that in her dissertation, she provided a section that gave terms and definitions. So she explained what the child find component is. And it is basically a component of the IDEA that states that all children suspected of having a disability living in a state are to be identified through the state and their agents for special education if they qualified through special education evaluations. So, why did I choose this particular dissertation? Well, I chose it for many reasons. I've been in the education field approximately 14 years, so well over a decade. And although education was not my initial field, I knew it was where I belonged. I've always had a passion for teaching. I always had a passion for children and learning. My mom has been an educator my entire life. And I can remember volunteering and helping her in her classroom from being a teenager all the way into adulthood. So I went the alternative route and received a Master of Education, and I came to work into the class. I came into the classroom. I chose this particular dissertation because it relates to my field of work, and it highlights the many difficulties that are encountered in implementing interventions that could help develop solutions, which is what intervention is all about. I currently serve as an intervention coach at a charter school in Louisiana. I love it. I love intervention. I was an interventionist, reading and math, mostly reading for 3 years before I became a coach. And I love intervention. I love being that person who bridges the gap. And although I don't teach as much, I go into the classrooms. I work with the interventionists and teachers as much as I possibly can because, like I said, my passion will always be to teach. So that's why I chose this study, because it related to what I do. The research explores how Texas school districts have not been able to identify scholars with special needs under the Child Find component of the IDEA using RTI, which stands for Response to Intervention. The Texas Educator Agency, or the TEA, launched the performance-based monitoring and analysis system to find students who were identified and were receiving special education services. Wiegand had 2 research questions in her dissertation. The first one is, how are middle school educators currently implementing the Child Find component of IDEA using RTI to identify struggling students for special education assessment and services? And the second question is, what are middle school educators' perceived barriers with the implementation of RTI? So Wiegand conducted a basic qualitative study to investigate and identify educators' perceived barriers that impede the successful implementation of RTI within Houston area middle schools. The study participant pool was limited to only middle school educators teaching grades 6 through 8. A basic qualitative study can generally be used when the researcher wants to glean information to help inform Texas stakeholders of middle school educators' perspectives regarding the implementation of RTI, and that's from Ravage and Carl 2016. Wiegand found participants for this study through social media, Facebook, the Facebook middle school educators group. I know all about those. I'm a part of a few of them. She also went on LinkedIn, which is another popular social media site, and she also utilized X, which is formerly known as Twitter. So the data collection instrument for this research project was researcher created open-ended and research questions protocol. The results determined that Houston, Texas area middle school teachers are A, improperly implementing RTI, B, not implementing it RTI with fidelity, which is a common issue because many educators, especially interventionists or ones that work in special education, for the most part, many schools I've worked at, I've seen where most of it has been improperly implemented. It seems that they are instead of implementing it properly, they are providing accommodations instead. Instead of using something more evidence-based, which is not smart or appropriate. But like I said, when you suffer from lack of training, it's not that you are doing it on purpose. You think you're doing what's best for the child, and you're not. So as I said, they're either A, improperly implementing RTI, B, not implementing RTI with fidelity, or C, not using evidence-based interventions but using accommodations instead. The educators identified barriers were their lack of knowledge of the child find component of IDEA and RTI, which is what I mentioned earlier, because before I selected this particular dissertation, I had to research and really understand what the child find component of IDEA was. I mean, like I said, I know we call things different. It's usually the same thing, but it may have a different name in different states. I didn't know if that's what it was. Like, maybe I said to myself, Chastity, you probably know what it is. It's just probably being called something different. But after I did the research, I have a better understanding. I wouldn't say I'm an expert on it, but I have a much better understanding than I did before. So the educators' lack of knowledge was supported by their response about lack of training. The educators who participated in this study that they had minimum to no training. Some even reported a 10 to 15 minute training at the beginning of the school year to understand what they are required to do. Like I mentioned again, I went the alternative route and received went through an MAT program and received a Master of Education K through 12. And although I took every extra opportunity that I was afforded, that was offered to me, I still felt like I was thrown into a dungeon, basically. When especially when I became an interventionist. I'm certified in special ed. But after working in special ed for a year, I didn't want to do it anymore because I felt like I was improperly trained. I felt like I was failing my students. And I know what it feels like to be one of those teachers that they put you in a room and have you to watch a 10 to 15 minute video, and I'm supposed to know everything that I'm supposed to do when I go in that classroom. You basically had me to sign something saying that I know, that I've read it or I've watched it and I understand it, which is not fair. And it's not fair to our students at all. So that's why I feel like, I wasn't even surprised about the teacher that where it says some reported a 10 to 15 minute video at the beginning of the school year, basically showing them what they're supposed to be doing. And lastly, some reported that they do not feel supported by the administration due to the lack of training and support. and that they are frustrated and left to figure out things on their own. And many of them feel like they're failing the students, as I mentioned, because I know what that feels like as well. They feel like they're failing the students because they haven't been properly trained by some administrators that wanted them to implement the program. And another thing that I've learned is that most of the time, the administrators are not properly trained. And so if the person that's supposed to be your supervisor is not properly trained, how are they going to properly train you? I can remember being an interventionist, and I had my AP when I moved into special education. I'm sorry. I can remember my AP. I would ask her questions, and she would say, I'm not sure. I'll get back to you. And she never did. And then I can remember going to my school leader a few times, asking her to point me in the right direction, or tell me somebody that I could talk to, like maybe, over the region, or, the special ed department, like the lead or somebody. And it was almost like she would get irritated because I was trying to figure out how to properly do my job. And because we had a few there that didn't care one way or the other, but I'm an educator that cares, because if I'm not helping my students, I'm not going to stay and continue to be a part of the problem. So yeah, a lot of that didn't surprise me, and I see it on a daily basis still. It's unfortunate, but it's true. In conclusion, the study ended with several key findings. It identified that there are significant barriers to the effective implementation of the RTI and multi-tier system of support, which is MTSS, in Houston middle schools. Based on these findings, WeGan provided research-based recommendations to overcome these barriers. The goal of the recommendations is to improve how school leaders and educators meet the needs of students, and to enhance the implementation of RTI and MTSS within the schools. This concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.